The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and he saw him, and he passed on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him. When he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spent.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The Gospel of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Your word, O Lord, is rich in mercy. May mercy indwell us as we open our hearts and our minds and our soul to your text. Amen. Last year, my daughter shared a rather alarming experience with me. I don't think I shared it with you, but if I did, I apologize. Got to start writing down what I shared. But she was walking in Gibbons Park, and she was a fair distance off from the bike path, and she saw a cyclist going at a high speed wipe out another a person walking. They didn't even slow down. So she was quite alarmed because clearly she could see from quite a distance he was sprayed out on the ground, probably hoping that there would be a crowd gathered around him before long. But in fact there wasn't. One other cyclist passed by. So Elizabeth finally got there. Meanwhile, phoning a friend saying, "It looks like there's something going on here, stay posted." When she got closer and looked at him, he wasn't moving much, but his arm was bulging out and was bleeding, and he had blood coming from his head. And she tried to kind of rouse him, and meanwhile she called the ambulance, and the ambulances, they do not go into the park that far down. They have to get him up. So she called her friend, who finally did arrive 20 minutes later, but before he arrived, she had managed to get a response from him and got him. If you know my daughter, she's quite petite or thin, got him leaning against her, and they started to wobble up the steep hill. There were several people that passed by, robust, healthy men. No one stopped, no one asked. They barely glanced and went on. Finally her friend came, they got this person up to a place where the ambulance could get him, and she hopes and prays that he got the care that he needed. Why I share this story today is that we all grew up with the Good Samaritan parable, and it means a lot to us. You probably as a child remembered it very well. And sometimes when something's that familiar, we often don't hear what it means now, in the context of where you are in your life right now and what is happening around us. So for me, hearing about Elizabeth, taking the time, knowing her strength maybe wasn't what was needed in this situation, yet compassion led her to act, and hopefully all is well with that man. Jesus asked us the question I'm going to ask you. Who was close neighbor to the man beaten and left to die? Okay, the Samaritan. Good answer, the answer I think everybody would give. What's interesting though is that that's the obvious answer, the Samaritan, but that's not the answer that the lawyer actually gave. He said, literally, the one, Jesus said, was a good neighbor who did mercy with him. Then Jesus adds, go on your way and do likewise. So the invitation here is for us to resist stopping and feeling merciful and actually doing mercy with those in need, whoever they are and whoever we think we are. The lawyer correctly summarizes the Mosaic law as love for God and neighbor, and then tries to justify himself by limiting the definition of neighbor. He wants Jesus to kind of tighten it up, but obviously Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus knows that the last thing on earth the lawyer needs is another discussion, so he tells him the story that we just heard. It's a story that you know about how it does not matter what we think, understand, know, feel, or say about love, but what we do about love. What we do about love that brings life. James chapter 2. What good is it, brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but you do not have works? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm, and eat your fill, and yet you do not supply their bodily need, what is the good of that? Now Barbara Brown Taylor put it poetically, and I'm going to share this. She said, let the summer showers of God's love soak the seeds of your right answers so that they blossom into right actions. And watch the landscape begin to change. Just do it. And find out that when you do live, and live abundantly, just like the man said. So if we look at the concrete ways that the Samaritan did mercy, to recap quickly, he came near. He was moved with compassion. He went to him. He bandaged the wounds. He poured oil, which is a soothing agent, and wine, an antiseptic, on them. He put him on his animal. He brought him to an inn. He took care of him at the inn. And when he had to leave, he gave the innkeeper money to keep caring for him, promising to even pay more if needed when he returned. So here's something that we might not have thought about before in this parable. This man put aside plans. Maybe for all we know, he was on his way to a family celebration in his honor, a feast of friends gathered at a great meal, or to meet a business partner, a time-sensitive job opportunity, a business transaction, or even a one-day sale. We don't know. He put aside more than that, more than his plans. He put aside prejudice, judgment, fear, and fear is what made the other two pass. The priest did not want to be unclean by touching someone who was a Samaritan, and the other man had business to do. So he put aside prejudice, judgment, fear, and assumptions about the vulnerable injured one. He put aside excuses, and he showed up with radical compassion. Now more than that, he put aside plans for his money. We can't assume he was wealthy or poor. We can only assume he possessed funds that he freely gave in this act of mercy, with very, very likely sacrifice. In other ways, this money was earmarked for use. I once heard a really great stewardship talk, and you know we always have a take-home? My take-home that I never forget was when he said to us, if you want to know about someone, we should change it to credit card. He used the word check. If you want to know about someone and what is important to them, take a look at their checkbook. It will tell you what they value. And more than this man put aside safety. He was taking a huge risk to help a man in society, and possibly the family who raised him had taught him was the enemy. Maybe this was an ambush, and as soon as he stopped to help, he himself could have been attacked by hiding robbers and vandals. On the night before he was killed by one fatal bullet, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressed a crowd of striking sanitation workers gathered at Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. The crowd was preparing to march for the workers' rights,
and Dr. King was in Memphis to march with them. In his speech, which would be his last speech ever, Dr. King actually preached on this passage. And I want to share with you some of his thoughts with you. Dr. King encouraged those gathered to develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness. And he repeatedly said, sometimes what a situation takes is for you to show up for others. He said, when we have our march, you need to be there. If it means leaving work, if it means leaving school, be there. Be concerned about your brother and sister. You may not be on strike, but either we go up together or we go down together. And then he told them this parable. A parable where two members of the injured man's own community saw him and did not stop to help him. But eventually a man of another race came by. This man chose not to be compassionate by proxy. He dismounted his animal. He got down in the ditch with the wounded traveler, and he administered first aid, and he led the traveler to safety. Jesus ended up saying this was a good man because he was concerned about his brother. What Dr. King doesn't dwell on, but is important to know, is that the Samaritan didn't simply help this man in a neutral territory. He was actually considered an enemy. The history is long and deep of the rivalry between the Jewish people and the Samaritans. And at this time and place, they were absolutely in conflict. Over the next centuries, we see this continues. Yet Jesus is shocking his hearers by having a Samaritan risking and giving compassion to what he's probably grown up in his family and being told. The Jewish people are your arch enemies. Jesus is trying to get through to us about dangerous unselfishness. As Dr. King concluded his reflection on the Samaritan parable, he acknowledges the danger of the road to Jericho. And wow, his road was definitely a dangerous one. He imagines that the reason the priest and the Levite did not come was above all fear. Perhaps they thought too, not only about the temple, but their own safety. So Dr. King says, the first question that the priest asked, this is really important for us to dwell on. The first question that the Levite also asked is, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? If I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? And that was the question that Dr. King posed to those preparing to march with the sanitation workers in Memphis, and it is still the question for us today. If we do not stop to help the wounded and heal the broken, what will happen to them? We are living in heartbreaking hard times, and there are stories that are almost unimaginable to us. With grief we read this week of the preventable deaths and suffering of people across the world. With shared sorrow, we hear of detentions and children separated from parents in China. And we mourn when we learn of mass graves of migrants in Texas. As we find ourselves learning geographically lessons through tragedy, we wonder, how long, O Lord, how long? How long until compassion and love overcome fear and prejudice? How long until stories of peace, building wash away headlines announcing violence and destruction? How long until we reach that mountaintop and see that promised land on the other side? Promised land that is open to all of us, regardless of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. We've heard from Pam Walters and the media, Pam is our delegate at General Synod, that at our Anglican General Synod, a solid majority voted in both the lay house and clergy to legalize gender-safe marriages, but it failed by 4 votes in the House of Bishops. So how do we walk with those for whom this immediate impact creates great pain. Unions waiting to be fully blessed, members of the church who are included and yet in this way excluded. Who needs us to show up? Who is being beaten up on dangerous roads near you and left to suffer? Who is being chewed up and spit out by our culture, or individuals or groups or institutions where we are? And in what ways are we as the family of St. John's owning that we are neighbors to people within and beyond this community, within and beyond our families, within and beyond St. Thomas? In what ways are we doing more than feeling sorry and passing by on the other side? In what concrete, physical, hands-on ways are you doing mercy? And every time you are, then the light of Christ shines brightly. And we are, as I spoke earlier, letting the fruit of the gifts of the Spirit in us ripen. God specializes, I want to close with, in the impossible. The Christian story is the improbable story of life conquering death and hope over despair against all odds. Even from the broken body and blood shed of Christ, new life emerges. We are a people that are defined by an empty tomb and a risen Lord, and a promise that there is nowhere beyond the reach of God's transformative love. Your resurrections have been powerful testimonies of how the light of the text of your life and the text of Jesus' words are mingled into one body, one word, one living hope. Amen.